The overhead klaxons blared throughout the orbital station, their repetition a mocking echo of so many false alarms and cycles past. Yet this time, no one sneered or rolled all their eyes in exasperation. The automated voice announced the same message again and again, leaving little room for denial. Emergency broadcast from the Galactic Confederacy Council. The Deathworlders have decided we are all valid targets. Within the station's main communications hub, dozens of alien officers scrambled to retrieve data, confirm signals, and decode the abrupt transmission. No one wanted to believe that after 50 long cycles of strict quarantine, the dreaded humans would appear so suddenly, and with such a bold ultimatum. As he hurried through the corridors, Graz ZT, a four-eyed, lanky-limbed communications officer, tried to calm the fluttering in his thoracic cavity. In the past, these council broadcasts tended to be about minor trade disputes or cultural misunderstandings, but the council's choice of words this time was uncomfortably dramatic. Reaching his console, he activated the main comm feed and saw the flickering hollow image of High Counselor Rex Tulvan, crest flattened against his skull. That was a dire sign of alarm among the pelican species, an undeniable indicator that things had gone very wrong indeed. "Attention all members of the Galactic Confederacy," Rex Tulvan's voice declared, trembling with stress. "We have received direct word from the human flagship, ironically named Olive Branch, that they are moving beyond their quarantine borders. Their representative, Admiral Penny Dreadful, issued what they call a final diplomatic communique. They have declared every species in Confederate space to be a valid target if we attempt to hinder their movement." The rest of the message repeated bits of data about the quarantine zone's breach, recommended defense postures, and the urgent directive not to fire on the human vessels unless absolutely necessary. Graz ZT listened, stunned, as the feed concluded with, "We must convene an emergency council session to address this. All military and civilian vessels are advised to stand by for further instructions." The hollow image dissolved, leaving the station's personnel in a tense hush. Lumi, his assistant, approached. She was an Arvian whose bioluminescent skin usually glowed in comforting turquoise patterns, but now she pulsed between a nervous white and a flushed red. "They can't be serious," she whispered. "Humans can't simply push into our space. We quarantine them precisely because they evolved on that lethal planet. Everything about them is too aggressive, from their immune systems to their war capabilities. They can't just decide to show up after half a century." Graz ZT rubbed his forehead, adjusting the small translator disc behind one ear. "The council broadcast leaves little room for doubt. If the humans truly are on the move, we need to remain calm. Our orders are to stand by. We're not to engage them unless threatened." A beep from his console drew his attention, and he recognized the insignia of the Pelican High Council. His translator flared to life, indicating that a direct council feed was incoming. Swallowing hard, he linked the call to the station's main chamber. Moments later, a new figure appeared on the holographic platform, Counselor Ziv, a Giovanni official known for her hardline attitude toward the humans. Her voice carried that distinctive Giovanni rasp. "Station S-19. Your orders are to observe and record any human vessels entering your sector. You will not fire unless fired upon. We are verifying the nature of the humans' claims. Remember, they have repeatedly been labeled Deathworlders for good reason. But before any confrontation, we must ascertain their real intentions." Graz ZT bowed his head respectfully. "Understood, Counselor. We await further directives." The transmission ended, and the tension remained thick. Lumi exhaled, her glow brightening faintly. She gestured for him to follow her into a smaller, sealed alcove for a private conversation. Once inside, she lowered her voice. "Graz, what do you think this is really about? The humans have been isolated for so many decades. We left them alone as they requested, under that official quarantine. Why now?" "I don't know," he said honestly. "There must be something pushing them to risk direct conflict with the Confederacy. We used to call them savage for surviving such a violent planet, but they never struck me as fools. They wouldn't attempt this without a reason." A sudden beep on Lumi's wrist console cut off a response. We're being hailed by a Confederate border station in Sector 7. Something about a large vessel with a design not in the database, moving fast. A chill ran along Graz ZT's exoskeleton. Then it's begun. The humans are here. Over the next several hours, reports trickled in from scattered outposts. Confusion rippled across the Confederacy as some smaller ships tried to intercept the intruders, only to be swiftly disabled. Strangely, no lethal force was used. The humans simply neutralized their weaponry or engines and sped on. The Council's statements clarified that this was not an invasion in the traditional sense, but it was undeniably an incursion into Confederate territory. At the station, the corridors buzzed with frantic activity. Crew members delivered updates in hushed, urgent voices. The rumor mill churned out half-truths. Some claimed that the humans had already destroyed a dozen ships. Others insisted the humans hadn't fired a single shot. Graz ZT tried to keep calm, focusing on real data. He organized transmissions, read sensor logs, and verified official channels. He soon discovered that the humans were broadcasting a surprisingly consistent message on all frequencies. We have come to deliver a warning to the Confederacy, and we will not be deterred. By the end of the first day, the entire station was on edge. The humans had sent word that a delegation would soon appear. Graz superiors tasked him to remain in the communications hub, waiting for the arrival of any official or unofficial envoy. Outside one of the wide windows, the stars seemed to pulse with the station's own tension. He couldn't help imagining how unstoppable the humans might be if half the stories about their resilience were true. Lumi, exhausted by her shift, touched his shoulder gently. "I need to rest, but if anything major happens, I'll call you," Graz assured. She nodded, shoulders trembling with residual anxiety, then hurried off to find temporary respite. Graz ZT looked back at his console, wondering if any new broadcast from the Council would clarify the situation. Nothing came. Yet as night cycle lights dimmed in the station, he sensed a larger storm building just beyond the edge of reason, a storm that threatened them all. When the second day dawned, by station standards, at least, an urgent ping announced the approach of a vessel. A wide, blocky silhouette appeared on the station's long-range scans. The hull matched no known Confederate designs, but the shape suggested modular segments. As it drew closer, the sensors sharpened, revealing distinct sections that could detach or reconfigure. He remembered reading fragments of human engineering philosophy, a function-over-form approach that many alien architects had once deemed barbaric. Yet there was a certain cunning beauty in such adaptability. He rushed to the observation deck, where a transparent canopy offered a sweeping view of space. Officers and guards lined the walkway, tense but with orders not to fire. The unknown vessel halted within standard approach distance, abiding by at least one universal protocol: do not appear threatening at a range that might cause immediate alarm. Through the shimmering field of the station's shield arrays, Graz ZT observed a small craft detach from the ship's side and glide forward. The pilot requested docking permission. Perhaps the rumored delegation had arrived. Graz ZT escorted a security detail to the docking bay. The air was heavy with anticipation, and the echo of footsteps punctuated the hush. One young guard, his reptilian tail rigid with fear, whispered, "If anything goes wrong." Another guard silenced him with a gesture. They all formed a line near the sealed airlock, weapons kept at a non-aggressive readiness. Graz inhaled and exhaled slowly. Within moments, the lock hissed, lights flickered from green to blue, and the outer door slid open. Standing in the threshold was a single human, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a crisp, dark uniform. The patch on his sleeve read Captain Marcus Webb. The only outward sign of potential threat was a sidearm holstered at his belt. Webb took a few steps forward, hands raised in a universal gesture of non-aggression, looking around with a faint, polite smile that displayed the forward-facing eyes and flat teeth typical of the species. Some guards stiffened. Predator eyes always unsettled them. But the human appeared calm. "I'm Captain Marcus Webb of the U.S. Audacity, he said, voice resonant in the hush of the bay. I have come to speak with the command staff of this station. My mission is peaceful, but urgent. I request safe passage to your briefing chamber. Graz ZT carefully moved forward. I'm Communications Officer Graz ZT, designated liaison. Please come with me. We expect compliance with standard disarmament protocols while aboard. Our security will hold your sidearm during any official meeting. Webb nodded, removing his sidearm and handing it over without argument. The guards exchanged baffled looks. They had not expected such easy cooperation. Despite everything, suspicion still weighed heavily in the atmosphere. They led Webb through the stark corridors, overhead lights reflecting off the polished metal floors. Along the way, various station personnel paused mid-stride to stare at him, the first human they had ever seen outside of archived footages and half-mythical stories. In the main conference hall, Captain Webb calmly outlined the human perspective. Graz ZT listened with rapt attention, though some members of the station's leadership sat with arms crossed, their body language shouting distrust. Webb spoke of a looming menace, an automated weapon system, something the humans called a berserker probe. According to him, it had entered Confederate space. He offered sensor data, advanced scanning modules, and a dire warning. This probe will not differentiate between one species or another when it carries out its function. Its design is extinction. One officer, a skeptic named Fal Nor, growled in retort. Why should we believe any of this? Humans have been quarantined for half a century. You push into our territory now, in violation of the treaty, and expect us to listen to stories of unstoppable doomsday devices. Webb's expression remained composed. Because the data is verifiable, we are prepared to share the schematics for our long-range sensors so your engineers can replicate them. Once you see it for yourselves, you'll understand. We did not come here to conquer. We came to try to save everyone from a threat the Council is underestimating. Foul Norse ridges trembled with anger. Or you want to trick us into letting you deeper into our space. We know humans thrive in conflict. You want us to lower our guard so you can strike from within. Captain Webb simply shook his head. I'm not here to force anything. Admiral Penny Dreadful is leading the main flotilla. I volunteered to be the first to meet you face to face because we want a dialogue. He turned to Graz ZT and the others. We don't expect immediate trust. Build our sensor arrays if you like. Test them. Verify the threat. You will find our claim is true. Graz ZT examined the schematics that Webb transmitted onto the central hollow projector. If legitimate, the technology was at least 2 centuries ahead of standard Confederate sensors. The specifications involved quantum entanglement beacons, a concept that lean men scientists had barely begun to theorize. Yet the data looked consistent, not some hastily fabricated nonsense. Graz felt a flicker of amazement and apprehension. If the humans had been quietly developing this in isolation, what else had they achieved? Over the next hours, the station's science team, including Dr. Thun, a brilliant Pelican researcher, huddled around the schematics. The more they studied them, the more they agreed the concept was valid. Fal Nor relented slightly, though he demanded more proof. Captain Webb patiently answered questions, refusing to show irritation even in the face of suspicion. Late into the night cycle, Dr. Thun approached Graz in a deserted corridor. I never believed I would say this, but these humans are either the greatest con artists in galactic history, or they're telling the truth. The sensor data matches everything we know about high-energy objects. If we replicate these arrays, we may actually see something out there, something terrifying. Graz nodded, remembering the repeated broadcasts of the DEATHWORLDERS have decided we're all valid targets. Was it possible that the Council's dramatic statement was only half the story? Perhaps the humans were indeed crossing into Confederate space without permission, but maybe for reasons more complicated than raw conquest. High Counselor Rex Tulvan soon requested an emergency session of the entire Confederacy. Delegates from every allied species would gather to decide how to respond to the humans, weigh the new data, and debate whether to maintain the quarantine. Graz ZT found himself assigned as a witness and translator to that session. It was an honor he had never anticipated. His mind swirled with anxious excitement as he boarded the transport bound for the Council's seat of power. The flight across hyperspace routes felt interminable. Lumi accompanied him, fidgeting with her wrist console. Her glow flared every time she glanced at the data from a human's sensors. "If they're telling the truth," she murmured, "this Berserker probe, or whatever it is, could be unstoppable. And if they're lying, we might be letting the galaxy's most dangerous species roam freely." Graz stared out the viewport into the swirling lights of FTL travel. "We might have to risk believing them. Can we afford not to?" The council convened in a grand circular chamber. Delegates of every shape and size filled the seats, their myriad cultures represented by colorful garments, crests, or tentacles. High Counselor Rex Tulvan presided at the central podium, flanked by holographic displays replaying the official transmissions from the humans. The overhead lights were dimmed to better highlight the enormous screens. Security was more intense than anyone had seen in decades, with guards from multiple species stationed at every entrance. Counselor Ziv from the Giovanni, her tentacles twitching, spoke first. "Fellow counselors, we face a crisis unprecedented in our recent history. The humans, quarantined due to their alarming biology and warlike tendencies, have broken free and are traveling through our space. They claim they come to warn us about a threat we cannot see. Should we take them at their word? Or is this a ruse to circumvent the restrictions we placed on them half a century ago?" She gestured to the central display. Sensor readings from the stations that had begun partial construction of the humans' entanglement array flickered into view. Faint but undeniable anomalies had begun to show, far beyond the usual perimeter. Something was moving out there, traveling on an approach vector that led straight into Confederate territory. Falnor, who had come to represent a border defense faction, spoke up. "My people remain skeptical, but these readings aren't random. Something is indeed traveling our way, at speeds that defy conventional propulsion norms. If it is this so-called Berserker probe, we must address the possibility that the humans have been honest, at least in part." Another delegate, a towering centurion covered in metallic scales, snarled, "We cannot forget the potential danger humans pose. Their vessel design is said to be modular in ways that break with every engineering principle we hold dear. They adapt too quickly. They survive millennia on a planet that should have annihilated them. We must consider them a threat as well." High Counselor Rex Tulvan raised his crest. "We do consider them a threat, but it may be that a far greater one looms. We have a responsibility to protect all member species. If the humans' data is correct, ignoring it could lead to catastrophic loss of life. There's also the fact that the humans have not fired lethal shots at any of our vessels so far, despite multiple attempts to repel them. This is not typical of an all-out invasion." A hush fell across the room. Graz ZT could feel the tension like static electricity in the air. It was one thing to debate hypotheticals about DEATHWORLDERS in previous cycles, when they were safely confined, but now everything was different. They had real data and a possible doomsday scenario that demanded attention. The delegates argued for hours, some calling for immediate militarized enforcement, others pushing to open direct negotiations. Ultimately, they arrived at an uneasy compromise. A small team would be sent to meet with the main human flotilla to verify the alleged threat. The quarantine would not be fully lifted, but they would stay their weapons until further notice. To Graz's surprise, he and Lumi were selected for this delegation, alongside Dr. Thun, the skeptical Falnor, and Captain JX Kiev, a seasoned officer from the Border Defense Fleet. Within a day, they boarded a specialized diplomatic cruiser, escorted by 2 heavily armed frigates that would maintain distance. The humans provided coordinates where Admiral Penny Dreadful's ships were holding position. The tension rose with every parsec traveled, but there was a shared sense of inexorable momentum as well. Some unseen cosmic force pushing them toward an encounter that would shape the future of the Confederacy. When their cruiser dropped out of FTL near the designated coordinates, They were greeted by a sight that triggered widespread shock. At least 15 human ships orbited calmly, arrayed in a formation that seemed both militaristic and strangely symmetrical. Their designs were indeed modular, multiple segments connected at reinforced junctions. Heavy external plating suggested thick armor, and the sensor readouts indicated energy output far beyond standard Confederate metrics. Yet the humans made no hostile moves. A brief signal arrived. Welcome to the U.S. Audacity. Permission granted to dock in Bay 3. We will honor standard quarantine protocols. Please proceed with caution. On the cruiser's bridge, Falnor exhaled a sharp hiss. They're being extremely accommodating, aren't they? Captain Key frowned. It's exactly as they said. They want to talk. Let's see what they have to say. The docking procedure was unervingly smooth. Graz Lumitur. Thun, Falnor, and Kiev disembarked into a spacious hangar that was pressurized to a mixture of gases that suited several known species. The floor was meticulously clean, and a row of human crew members waited, each wearing some type of uniform. Two moved forward to greet them, a tall woman with short crop hair and a man with a neat beard. The woman's uniform bore insignia that read Admiral Penny Dreadful. Even if Graz had not recognized the name, the confident way she carried herself declared her authority. Admiral Penny Dreadful, commanding officer of the Earth Expeditionary Force. She introduced herself without hesitation. And this is Commander Sagan. Welcome aboard, delegates of the Galactic Confederacy. We understand your concerns and appreciate that you have come to speak in person. Captain Kiev, trying his best to hide any visible apprehension, replied in kind, offering a formal greeting on behalf of the Confederacy. As Admiral Dreadful stepped aside to guide them through corridors that gleamed with a practical aesthetic, Falnor scowled openly at every detail he found suspicious. Lumi, by contrast, gazed around in an odd mixture of nerves and fascination, her bioluminescent patterns shifting with her curiosity. Dr. Thun, rarely one for social niceties, peppered Commander Sagan with questions about the environmental controls and the power distribution methods they employed to maintain multi-species compatibility. In a large briefing room, the delegates settled around a circular table. Admiral Dreadful wasted no time diving into the heart of the matter. She initiated a holo display showing a menacing object, arrowhead-shaped and black as midnight, floating amid swirling cosmic dust. It had minimal visible thrusters but radiated powerful scans. This is the Berserker probe we've detected, the Admiral began. An automated weapon system, potentially centuries or millennia old, designed to eradicate any advanced civilization it finds. It's traveling along a trajectory that leads right into Confederacy space. Dr. Thun leaned in, eyes wide. Your technology can track it this precisely? Yes, Dreadful responded. Over the past 50 years, we've placed quantum-entangled sensor nodes across multiple star systems, creating an early warning net. That net has detected the Berserker's approach well before your standard arrays could. We do not know who built it originally. We only know that once activated, it systematically hunts down intelligent life. Falnor snorted. And we're supposed to take your word that this is more urgent than your own desire to expand beyond quarantine? Commander Sagan folded his arms. If we intended full-scale invasion, we wouldn't be having this conversation. 50 years ago, your council deemed us too risky to let into the Confederacy. We honored that policy. But now that we've discovered something that might kill us all, we won't sit back and watch your leadership ignore the threat until it's too late. Admiral Dreadful swept a hand across the holo display, zooming in on sensor data that flashed with ominous highlights. We believe the probe will arrive in the next standard week. It's advanced, adaptive, and heavily armed. We also suspect it broadcasts lures on subpsychic frequencies that draw curious or combative civilizations to investigate. That's how it finds new targets. Falnor glanced at Kiev, who wore a dark expression. The captain had seen too many conflicts along the border to dismiss the possibility of an unstoppable weapon. Suppose we trust you, Kiev said carefully. What's your plan to stop it? Unity, Dreadful replied simply. Humans alone can do a great deal of damage, but if the probe adapts to our tactics, eventually we might fail. However, if we strike it with multiple species, technologies, and strategies simultaneously, it will be overwhelmed before it can adjust. That's where the Confederacy comes in. We need your help, and in turn, we'll help you remain alive. Silence fell. Graz noticed how Admiral Dreadful's outward confidence was tempered by a subtle tension around her eyes. She might be a Deathworlder, but that did not mean she was immune to worry. Or perhaps she was worried the Confederacy would refuse her plan and let suspicion override their own self-preservation. The meeting stretched for hours. Foul Norse systematically challenged every aspect of the human story, demanding proof and cross-examination. Dr. Thun, after analyzing the shared sensor logs, slowly converted from outright skeptic to cautious believer. Kiev engaged the humans in tactical discussions, verifying the logic of multi-species attacks. Graz and Lumi recorded every detail, sometimes exchanging glances of astonishment. They had anticipated arrogance from these powerful Deathworlders, but instead they found an odd blend of determination and transparency. Finally, Falnor stood with a frustrated sigh. I still don't trust you, but I'd be a fool to ignore that something is out there. I'll recommend to the Council that we form a provisional alliance, strictly to neutralize this threat. I hope you humans are prepared for scrutiny. Dreadful's lips curved into a thin smile. Scrutinize all you want. We have nothing to hide. Aside from advanced tactics, we'll only reveal once the Berserker is in range. I don't expect you to like us. I only hope you'll fight alongside us. Captain Kiev tapped his comm device. Let's relay a priority message to High Counselor Rex Tulvan. We should coordinate a joint fleet as soon as possible. Time is short. Within the day, the fragile alliance took shape. Word spread across Confederate space. Some races reluctantly readied their warships under a new set of battle protocols hammered out between the Council and Admiral Dreadful's staff. Despite the rancor, fear of the unknown overcame their distaste for Deathworlders. In turn, the humans reconfigured parts of their fleet to operate side by side with Confederate craft. Tension ran high, but now it was combined with a sense of unprecedented unity. Back at the Council's seat, Rex Tulvan announced the partial lifting of the quarantine. Effective immediately, human vessels traveling under this allied pact will not be targeted. We must focus on the Berserker threat. Let it be known that this is not a wholesale membership in the Confederacy, but a conditional status until the crisis is resolved. The debate raged for hours among the delegates, some outraged at even temporary acceptance of humans. Others demanded that the entire matter was a scam. But those who had scrutinized the data and those who had conversed with the human delegation spoke more loudly. As the days ticked down, the joint fleets mobilized at the projected coordinates in open space. Graz ZT stood on the bridge of a Confederacy cruiser, the Resolute, by invitation of Captain Kiev. From here, he watched sensor readouts as ships from a dozen species and the humans formed a carefully orchestrated arrangement. Whenever he looked at the screens tracking the approach of that ominous contact, he felt a knot of dread in his gut. He found himself thinking, what if the humans are right? What if this device is unstoppable? When the unknown entity dropped out of FTL precisely where Admiral Dreadful predicted, the entire fleet braced for impact. Images of it appeared on the main viewer, a sleek arrowhead with shifting black plating. Dr. Thun, also present, muttered, "It appears almost smaller than expected, but the energy readings are monstrous." Indeed, the device glowed with readings that suggested it had advanced weapons and adaptive shielding. A silent volley of scanning pulses emanated from it, cutting across the Allied formation. Then, in a flash of greenish light, it fired a single burst at one of the forward Confederate frigates. The frigate's shields collapsed under some unknown frequency shift. Crew ejected in emergency pods, some making it out just before the frigate imploded. A wave of combined horror and fury swept the line. Admiral Dreadful's calm voice echoed through all channels. Engage Plan Alpha. Keep your distances. Don't let it focus on a single pattern for too long. The order triggered the first wave of the Centurion and Arvian ships, darting in agile arcs around the probe, releasing sporadic energy salvos that changed frequency unpredictably. Meanwhile, heavier Confederate dreadnoughts aimed massive coordinated beams to strike from multiple angles. At first, the Berserker probe seemed perplexed. It spun, returning fire in sharp, calculated bursts, but the chaotic approach stymied its aim. Then it began to adjust. Its next blasts were more precise, forcing the agile ships to retreat. Several took heavy damage. Admiral Dreadful, commanding from her flagship, the U.S. Olive Branch, ordered the human vessels to shift formation, feigning vulnerabilities, luring the probe to direct its main weapon in a predictable direction. Then an entire column of human warships bombarded it from the flank. The battle raged. The probe's shield readings dropped from the combined assault, going from 70% to 60%, then to 55%. But each time it sank, the probe executed some rapid adaptation, modulating its defenses. The Allied fleet lost ships, human and Confederate alike. Explosions flared, emergency pods launched. Dr. Thun watched the tactical display with despair, while Foul nor clenched his jaw in grim determination, shouting at gunnery officers to keep adjusting frequencies. Graz ZT relayed messages between the ships as swiftly as he could, feeling sweat trickle down his forehead. So many signals, so many cries for help. Then came the final order from Admiral Dreadful, transmitted across all channels. All units, stand by. We're enacting Contingency Omega. Maintain your positions and cease fire for 10 seconds. Contingency Omega had never been discussed publicly. Even Captain Kieve's eyes widened in shock. But the entire Allied fleet complied with the directive, giving the 3 largest human vessels, among them the Olive Branch, time to maneuver around the probe. Energy readings on those ships spiked off the charts. They began emitting threads of luminous energy that connected them to each other and to the probe, forming a triangular cage of brilliant white. Inside that radiance, the black shape thrashed, launching continuous beams that hammered at the human shields. The Watchers could only gape as Admiral Dreadful's measured voice rang out again. Attention, Berserker Unit. Cease your activities, or we will collapse this field and destroy you. There will be no second chance. Everyone on the Allied channels heard only static in reply. The probe unleashed a renewed barrage, focusing all weaponry on a single tear in the triangular net. The hull plating of the human vessels began to show critical strain. The triangular field flickered, but still it held. Then so be it, Dreadful said softly, heard on open broadcast. The next second, the net contracted in a flash more intense than a star going supernova. Graz ZT had to avert his eyes from the brightness on the screen. The sensor array displayed chaos. Energy levels spiked. A shockwave rippled through the Allied lines, but no actual destructive force impacted them. It was as though the worst of the explosion folded in on itself. When the sensors cleared, the probe was simply gone, and so were the 3 largest human ships. Silence. The Allied ships drifted, uncertain. Some believed the humans had sacrificed themselves to annihilate the Berserker. Others feared a dimensional catastrophe might have swallowed everything. Then a new flurry of sensor pings. 3 shapes dropping out of FTL, battered but intact. The moment the resolution clarified, the comm channel erupted in a cacophony of relief and awe. The 3 human vessels had survived, using a carefully calculated FTL jump at the instant of quantum field collapse. Admiral Dreadful's voice, faint with exhaustion, cut through the uproar. The Berserker probe has been neutralized. All Allied ships stand by for search and rescue operations. We have casualties on both sides. Let's take care of our people now. Cheers echoed across the bridge of the Resolute. Kiev exhaled deeply, allowing a rare smile. Foul nor let out a disbelieving laugh. Dr. Thun mumbled, "Deathworlders indeed. Only they'd pull a stunt like that." Graz ZT, feeling adrenaline course through him, realized that, in a matter of days, everything about the known galaxy had changed. The humans were no longer just the quarantined monsters in the shadows, but allies, strange, courageous, and unstoppable in their resourcefulness. In the following week, the Confederacy organized a solemn but hopeful gathering to commemorate the fallen and formalize a new relationship with humanity. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council was bright with ceremonial lights, and for the first time, human representatives walked openly through the corridors, exchanging words with varied alien diplomats. A hush fell as High Counselor Rex Tull Van took the podium. His crest was half lowered in a respectful posture, but no longer pinned tight with alarm. We have witnessed a danger that threatened all life within our territory, and we have seen that the humans, the so-called DEATHWORLDERS, did not seize that moment to conquer or destroy us. Instead, they fought alongside us at great cost to themselves to protect our galaxy from a doomsday device. We cannot ignore what they have done, nor can we forget the caution that led us to quarantine them in the first place. Today, we recognize that the quarantine no longer serves our mutual interests. Therefore, by majority vote, we are lifting the human quarantine and granting them provisional status as Confederation allies. Details of deeper integration will follow. Admiral Penny Dreadful stood beside Counselor Rex Tull Van, flanked by Captain Marcus Webb and other human officers. She addressed the assembled delegates. "We thank you for placing your trust in us, however tentative it may be. We do not ask you to dismiss your concerns overnight. We only ask you to consider this alliance a starting point. Our past conflicts, our violent homeworld, these things shaped us, but they do not define our future. I believe that together, we can face challenges far worse than the Berserker probes." A ripple of applause followed. Not universal applause, but enough to echo through the chamber. Fal Nor, arms folded, admitted in a low voice to Graziti, "I was wrong about them, or at least partially so. They are indeed dangerous, but that danger might be what we needed to survive." Graz nodded. He could see Lumi across the room, her skin glowing in a soft, relieved pattern. "Dr. Thun spoke quietly with a group of Pelican researchers, presumably discussing how to integrate quantum entanglement sensors into general Confederacy usage. After the session, an informal reception followed in an expansive atrium. Different species mingled, though many still eyed the humans warily. Food and drink were exchanged in attempts to bridge cultural gaps. Admiral Dreadful and her officers navigated the crowd with polite courtesy, accepting gratitude while gently deflecting lionization. Graz drifted toward a far corner, taking a moment to process everything that had happened. Within a fraction of a standard month, he had gone from dreading human contact to witnessing them save the Confederacy from total destruction. The shift was dizzying. He felt a gentle tap on his shoulder and turned to see Admiral Dreadful herself. Her face carried a small, tired smile. "Officer Graziti, isn't it? Thank you for all you did. We had an easier time communicating with the Confederacy because of people like you who were willing to listen." He offered a slight bow. "I was only doing my job, Admiral, and, if I'm honest, I was terrified at first." She gave a short laugh. "That makes two of us. Though we do well in crises, trust me when I say we humans were equally anxious about how you'd react." This alliance was by no means guaranteed. A swirl of a bright red robe signaled High Counselor Rex Tull Van moving closer, crest bobbing in greeting. He addressed both of them. "Admiral, Officer Graziti, you may wish to see the latest scans. Our new sensors have picked up faint signals matching the Berserker signature, though this time at a far edge of the galaxy. We must remain vigilant. There could be more probes out there." Dreadful sighed, nodding. "We suspected as much. Once these things are built, there's no telling how many were launched or where they roam. The best approach is to keep forging deeper partnerships. Our combined forces were barely enough to stop one. We'll need the entire Confederacy prepared if another wave arrives." Counselor Rex Tull Van looked to Graz. "Keep that in mind, officer. Your communications expertise might be in high demand in the coming days. We'll need voices who can calm fear and encourage collaboration. I have a feeling this is only the beginning of a much larger confrontation." Grazie DEATHWORLDERS. I'll do my best, counselor. Later, he, Lumi, and Dr. Thun found themselves on a balcony overlooking the atrium. Below them, delegates of a dozen species mingled. In a corner, a small group of humans laughed over some joke that their alien companions did not yet fully grasp. Lumi's bioluminescence pulsed in a gentle pattern of contentment. "I never thought I'd see this day," she said. "A month ago, the idea of humans freely walking among us would have horrified me. Now, I can't help feeling safer with them around." Dr. Thun brushed at his crest. "They're still an anomaly. They might always feel like a paradox, savage and ingenious, frightening and heroic. But at least now we know they'd rather fight alongside us than be our enemies." Grazie nodded. "We once labeled them DEATHWORLDERS, imagining that was all we needed to know. Now we realize that same fearsome adaptability made them the perfect allies against something that threatened to kill us all. The galaxy has changed tonight. I doubt it will ever be the same." They stepped back from the railing as Admiral Dreadful finished another conversation and offered them a warm wave. There was talk of setting up a specialized research group to identify more Berserker probes and to investigate potential origins. Humanity stood ready to share knowledge that had once been hidden behind the quarantine. Many old prejudices would linger, but the door was open, the path to trust at least partially cleared. Perhaps that was all anyone could ask for after centuries of division. Captain Kiev joined them, removing his formal hat with a resigned sigh. "I've been to more council receptions than I can count, but none quite like this. Fancy attire, forced smiles, yet for the first time, it doesn't feel like political theater. It feels real, like we've all faced the edge of extinction, and now we realize we need each other." Fal Nor appeared with a hint of a reluctant grin, holding a glass of something luminescent. "To unexpected allies," he said. He offered the glass in a symbolic gesture of unity. "I have to say, I still can't quite believe that I owe my life to these DEATHWORLDERS." Kiev took a moment before answering. "We all do." Grazie observed how the crowd parted to let Admiral Dreadful pass as she approached the delegation of High Counselor Rex Tallvan, presumably discussing the next strategic steps. There was a definite shift in the air. Words like conquest and danger were still whispered, but so were saviors and partnership. The question was not if the Confederacy could accept the humans, but when and how deeply. As the shimmering lights overhead changed hue to signal the late evening hour, a subdued sense of optimism quietly settled into the hall. Despite the tragedies of the battle, the ships lost, the brave souls who perished, this had been a victory. The first official test of a combined fleet featuring the once feared DEATHWORLDERS. And it was a success that might pave the way for even greater cooperation. Once the galaxy saw that it could stand together against a truly existential threat, perhaps old feuds, old biases could be reevaluated. Grazie felt Lumi's hand rest lightly on his arm. "We've got a long road ahead," she said, reading the swirl of thoughts on his face. "But for the first time, it feels like a future worth working toward." He gently touched one of her glowing filaments. "Yes. A future where DEATHWORLDERS and the Confederacy fight side by side, not out of fear, but out of shared purpose." He paused, recalling the message that had started. "It all, that stark warning from the Council. The DEATHWORLDERS have decided we are all valid targets." An echo of fear rose in him, but he smiled faintly. Strange how those words turned out. "We thought it was our death sentence. Maybe it was just their blunt way of saying we either unify or perish." Lumi's glow brightened. Dr. Thun, looking weary but quietly satisfied, joined them in gazing over the crowd of mingling species. In the far corner, Fal Nor clinked a glass in a hesitant toast with two human officers, who responded with small bows. On another side, Captain Kiev offered a handshake to Commander Sagan. Over by the entrance, more delegates trickled in, some wearing cautious expressions, others nodding politely to the humans they once viewed as nightmares. In the end, it had taken the threat of a Berserker probe to bring them all to this moment, and it was a realization that weighed on Graz's mind. Sometimes it took something bigger and more terrifying than one's old enemies to see that unity was necessary. The humans, with their uncanny ability to survive, had proven that they could face the darkness. Now the Confederacy, even with lingering doubts, had seen that these Deathworlders might just be the allies they needed. The music in the hall changed to a softer, more contemplative tune. Around them, conversations continued. New alliances were formed, and age-old suspicions began to thaw, even if only by a few degrees. Graz ZT let his shoulders relax. Tomorrow, the galaxy would have to face new challenges. But tonight, they could celebrate a triumph that might herald a new chapter in the shared history of humans and all the other species under the Council's banner. When the evening ended and the dignitaries dispersed, the hallway leading out of the council chamber was lined with banners symbolizing peace in a dozen languages. Graz ZT walked alongside Lumi and Dr. Thun, exchanging final words with Captain Kiev. Just outside, a cluster of press drones hovered, capturing images of humans and aliens departing side by side. He felt a swell of cautious pride that they had all played a part in averting catastrophe. No one could say for certain what the future held. But as the wide doors opened, revealing stars that glittered like countless potentialities beyond the station's dome, Graz ZT allowed a small, hopeful thought that the scariest qualities of the Deathworlders, their adaptability, their iron will to survive, had saved everyone. If the next threat emerged from the cosmic void, the galaxy would stand a better chance because the humans had arrived. And that new alliance, that synergy of once fearful species, might just be the beginning of something extraordinary. He closed his four eyes for a moment, breathing in the crisp, recycled air. The words from Admiral Dreadful echoed in his memory. "We don't need you to like us. We only need you to fight beside us." Grazity murmured under his breath, certain now of something he would have scoffed at weeks before. "We need them. We truly do." Then he opened his eyes and joined the others on the path forward into the next uncertain chapter of the galaxy, together.